Muy buenos días a todos.
Good morning. We are at LIBRAQ 2020, its third edition, which is gathering this year around the topic roots or raíces. And this is a section on the independent bookstores. I'm with two women who I really admire. One who is a very good friend, and another one with whom we've been able to share many things with the distance, in spite of the distance. And I really admire their work in the publishing sector. In this section, which is called To Survive the Crisis, a real life crisis, it is not an accurate name because to survive the crisis indicates that we have overcome the crisis and that we are narrating the storm while we are inside the hurricane. So with Claudia Zoe Bedrick, who is with us today, she is founder of Enchanted Lion Press in New York, in Brooklyn, New York, and María Osorio, the founder of Babel Libros, an independent publisher, who is in Bogotá, will have the opportunity of narrating this from the hurricane standpoint, how to be in an independent market, how to overcome the crisis, which are structural crises. They are not necessarily because of a short-term situation as the one we are living now. So I would like to welcome our two special guests. In a few minutes, I'll tell you more about them, but I want to give them the opportunity to greet the audience today. So let's start with Maria. Thank you, Alexandra. It is a pleasure to be here. Sadly enough, I'm not in Barranquilla, which, I mean, I was not going to miss the third edition, given that I've attended the previous two editions. So I think it's great what you're saying. It's to narrate this when you are inside this hurricane. I mean, mainly this Latin American hurricane, which is more severe. Well, in North America, things are not that easy. We're just waiting to see what's happening in the US to see how that affects us. Okay, now, Claudia, can you greet the audience, please?
Thank you, Alexandra. I am so pleased to be here and only wish I could be there with you in person, but to have the opportunity to be with you over screen is still amazing. And I thank you for having me. Right, we're in the midst of a lot of chaos and a lot of change. But in certain ways, I guess we're finding new opportunities and chances to collaborate and cross distance within what is making us vulnerable at the same time. So it's a really special moment to be with you from such a distance while I sit here in Brooklyn, and I think it's a hopeful thing as well. I look forward to talking with all of you.
Bueno, quiero contarles un poco de quiénes son
I
Claudia.
would like to tell you who is Claudia Zoe Bedrick and María Osorio. For those of you who haven't had the fortune to know them, Claudia is an editor, publisher of Enchanted Lion Press. She calls it a small publishing company. I don't know how small it is. Let's see how this works. She has a venue in Brooklyn, New York. And the first publishing was in 2003. She grew in the city of New York, and since she was a child, she would go to the New York Public Library with her father and her sister. She graduated from Harvard College, and her first editorial work were in the city of New York. Afterwards, she went to live in Paris, and she worked in nonprofit organizations with libraries, universities in Eastern and Western Europe and in countries of the former USSR. She's currently living in Brooklyn. That's her venue. And now in 8 opportunities, she has moved her office from one place to the other. Now let's speak about Maria from the editorial independent sector. She doesn't need an introduction, but for those who are listening to us, she is an architect. And she has been working with kids for a long time, first as director of CLI, communications director, and then as assistant director of Funda Lectura. And in 2001, she founded Babel Libros, which started as an editorial project, and then it became something else. I'm not going to dwell on it, given that we're going to cover this in the dialogue. Maria, she received the Bon Award, is given by the Bologna Ragazzi Award. It's like the best editor of the Central and South American regions. And also she received an award in Guadalajara. So we are with 2 women who have decades of experience. I would like to start this conversation asking each one of them to give us an outlook of how an independent editorial works. For those who are not this familiar with this type of editorial, let us talk about the size. Let us be very specific, because when a reader receives a book, he or she doesn't know about the process behind that. And some people think that all the books come from the same company, and we are not familiar with the fact that the reader receives the book and it has been intervened by less people in the chain, by less processes in the chain, because independent publishers have different structures. It is a one-to-one work with the book. So I would like to share some images, and I would like first to give the floor to Claudia. So she will say, tell us how many people are working in her company, if she carries out other activities besides publishing, her years of experience. So while she addresses you, I'm going to share some images. So we will take a trip to Brooklyn, and this way we will give Claudia the opportunity of tell us how Enchanted Lion works. It's live. And then afterwards, we'll do the same thing with Maria.
Enchanted Lion is a 17-year-old company, and we're a family-owned company, and work with graphic designers to create our books. And it is only since 2012 that we have actually had staff. So for the first 9 years of our existence, it was myself, and my mother helped a little bit. And then for the first 5 years of the company, my younger sister was part of it as well. It's pretty intense, and it's pretty lonely to be an independent company, as opposed to most publishing in this country, which is corporate, meaning it has a vast structure, it has vast resources, it has hundreds and hundreds of people involved, and many different departments, very, very specifically focused on different aspects of what it is to publish a book, whether that is producing it physically, that is designing it, that is marketing it, that is talking with libraries or bookstores and so on. So to be an independent publisher is to be freestanding, to have a very, very small staff, and to have to do all of what a bigger publisher does, but with far more limited resources. We currently have, actually our first full-time person other than myself is only going to start working with us next week. So that's a milestone for us, and it's taken 17 years to have somebody else who's going to be working full-time with Enchanted Lion. If you look at our website, you'll see that many people are shown on our website. And that's because they're very passionate about what we do and they're involved with what we do. But their hours can be from 3 hours a week to maybe 6 hours a week. So again, they're listed as belonging to Enchanted Lion, and they have invested their heart and their talents in what we do, but only in a limited way because we can't support a bigger structure as Enchanted Lion Books. I will turn that back over to you now so we don't take up too much time.
Seguimos con María.
Okay, now we would like to give the floor to Maria. Well, we are a company, Babel. It is a very small company that has had an important turnover. In order to survive, we are 2 people working for this publishing company, and in order to survive, we have an infrastructure. As you can see there, we are 11 people at Babel. I mean, in that picture, you don't have everybody, but I mean, people stay working with us, and with Alba Lucia and with Germana. We've been together for over 20 years. The rest of the people, Maria, who is also working there, she has been there for 7 years. And the truth is that when we founded Babel in 2001, we realized that we were not going to survive only publishing books. So we had to create an infrastructure around it first, to have like a distributing company that could cover the books that we were producing, and also to have an infrastructure that will enable us to work in marketing. Then we had a bookstore, because when we started, there were no bookstores. There was only Espantapájaro y el libro del cuento. I mean, people really didn't take care of the books in the bookstores. So we decided to have our own bookstore. So we have the distributing company, the bookstore, and learning how to market. Then we created the publishing company. It goes very slow. And then we also have a library, which is what you see on the slide outside. It's to have an audience that we can attract to our library, taking away the need for them to buy. I mean, we wanted for them to have a relationship with the book, forgetting about the commercial part. Once they will come to visit us in the library, obviously they could go inside into the bookstore. The editorial company started in 2005. I mean, we had those 5 years, which enabled us to have that infrastructure. So at the first 5 years, I was maintaining the structure, and then to also to have my income from that. And now the company helps to give us the economical support we need. Sometimes we have considered taking one out of this, but they all work together. And actually, the publishing company is the one that helps the distributing company and the bookstore. Thank you, Maria. From your testimonials, from both of you, I'd love to have that possibility of conveying the message that you can live of the books, but it's really more the love you feel. What moves us is the desire of working with something valuable in this world. And obviously this pathway has ups and downs, and sometimes you have to put up with many things imposed by the market infrastructure. It's like desire of delivering something that is beautiful, that is valuable into the market. For me, the books of Enchanted Lion are like some treasures, like jewels. We can see that the construction of that catalog has required a vast amount of time, and we cannot say that one book of Enchanted Lion looks like the other. I mean, they look alike in the sense that when you see a book, you say, oh, that's from Enchanted Lion. But the selection of the books enables us to have a broad vision on the world and the broad vision of the children. And I think that's the purpose behind Claudia, to offer that vision of the world through the children's eyes. And that's for adults and for children. I'm going to show an example of her most recent books. This is a treasure. I mean, it's the way she chooses the format, the book cover, books that have different features inside. It's a very important artistic and manual work. These are books that will not tend to be considered not that commercial. I mean, it's not the mainstream publication, but those are the bets that an independent publisher can do. This is another book. It is a beautiful book. That's why I'm saying that these are publishings that have a different lens of the world. And it's, I mean, you have here Flannery O'Connor. I mean, she is into birds, and she has a visual aesthetic bit that is just awesome. We wanted to show these two books to put you into context. And we want to ask Claudia, given the bet of an independent publisher, but also the difficulty that it brings. How do you select that catalog? If it's chosen, knowing that perhaps it is not the commercial one, the one that represents more income, but at last it represents the publishing company. How is your day-to-day when you're going to come up with a catalog? How do you make those decisions?
Thank you for the question, Alexandra. So I think the first thing to say here is that children's publishing in the U.S. is strong. There are many people doing it. There are plenty of commercial books. And so there really would be no logic for a small independent company to come and offer more commercial books. Because in fact, while that might seem the road to making more money, it really wouldn't be, because there are all these publishers doing that already, and they have bigger setups, more resources, and they can put more books into the marketplace. So we would be competing with something that we couldn't compete with. So the original vision of Enchanted Lion was not to compete with that, but to offer books that couldn't be found, books that just didn't seem to be available to children here. So we started very early on to do books in translation and to look around the world for different kinds of stories and different sorts of aesthetics, different narrative structures that were missing from the marketplace here. And for example, the American tradition, the North American tradition, the US tradition of telling a story is very closed, you know, that you have an arc, you have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and you want to close your story. But there are other traditions and other ways of telling stories, and there are many stories which are open-ended, and they raise more questions than answers they give. And so, you know, pursuing those sorts of stories for children that would solicit wonder and engage their thinking and have them ask questions, as opposed to just closing a book and feeling like they were finished with a story, was a particular interest to us. So at this point in our work, we do books in translation, we do reissues of books from the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and we do original books. The two books that Alexandra just showed you, the picture book about Flannery O'Connor is an original book. That manuscript came to us from a US-based author, and the illustrator Ping Zhu is a Chinese-American artist of exceptional talent. And then the other book she showed, Telephone Tales, is of course, it's Rodari. So it's a book in translation. It's the first time that Telephone Tales has come into English in North America. There was a much, much older, smaller selection that was published in the UK. I think I don't remember, in the 40s or 50s or something like that, but I mean, this is the first time that Telephone Tales and Rodari is really coming to American culture. So when we look to build our catalog, we are not trying to compete ever at all. We are trying to present books that really can't be found anywhere else, and that's why people buy them from us, and that's how we can survive, because we are offering something that other publishers don't.
Completamente de acuerdo.
I totally agree. They have like an exclusive seal. They are very different. And I think that outlook of narrating stories, sharing stories, opens the possibility that the market it's not only for children, it is broadened towards an adult audience that values this type of publishings. Now I would like to give the floor to Maria. I would like to show two publications of the Babel catalog, which are very different regarding the bet of the publishing company, La Mujer de la Guarda. So with this book, Babel was awarded a prize in the Bologna Fair, as well as the books of Enchanted Lion. Here we also have an exercise selecting the format and also see how is this story assembled. This is a book. Well, Maria, if I make a mistake, please let me know. But the idea about these books is to mix the visual narrative with the text. So first, it seems that it's an album book, a book without text, that it's like it's the preamble to the story. Then we go to the book as such, to the narrative, and we end with another set of images that close the idea of an album book. This is a beautiful book illustrated by Alejandra Costa. It is a strong book because what it narrates, as Claudia said, is different to what you find in the market. And Maria, I'm sure that you want to talk about the frontier. Within that frontier, we also have this publication. It's one of my favorite books, Entre la Espada y la Rosa. That's its title in Spanish. It's Seeking for Other Voices. It's to get into the field of translation with a set of short stories. And it has different pictures which are produced by the same artist. And there is like an awareness regarding the format and the aesthetic of the book. And I'm sure, Maria, you would also like to talk about it. So Maria, tell us about that exercise of choosing publications that are not that commercial per se, but that's the desire of the publishing company. Well, I fully agree with what Claudia has said. I chose another pathway. At first, I started with certain publications. It's like the Monument of Colombian Literature for Children. So, I mean, I was doing all the exercise, all the different searches for the editorial. When I started with this, I was asking why the image was prevailing, mainly for books in Spanish, and the narrative was left behind. So I started asking what's happening with the narrative. How come we cannot publish a narrative if it's not for school collections? How come we cannot come up with something different? So we started with that collection, Entre la Espada y la Rosa, which was just shown by Alexandra, and I said that collection requires more strength. We need a stronger image in that collection of books. So I started working in that collection, trying to look for some images. I wanted to have books that will be like jewels. So one day I went into my bookstore and I said, what am I doing? I mean, my discourse was going in a different side. I was thinking about the narrative and not the image. So then I came up with this collection. It has no images. The only one it has is the picture of the author on the first page. But I wanted for it to have like a physical link and for the editorial work to be beautiful. I mean, for people to want to have this book in their hands. But what I really wanted was to focus on the narrative. It became like a manifest. I mean, if you're not going to read it, don't buy it. I mean, it's not beautiful to put on a coffee table. So when I started looking for the paper, it used for the printing, I said, what's the paper that Random House uses? Well, it's this one. I said, okay, that's the one I'm going to use for this collection. And that is how I started. I started working on the text. I was looking after every single detail to have quality literature that will not exclude adults. It is not a collection only for young people. It's also for adults. As of then, I started thinking that life in the with this extreme philosophy was very complicated. So, so through this Frontera Ilustrada, I said, let's analyze the narrative. Let's talk about the narrative. Let's work with an illustrator on some beautiful text, very well written, but the image will have a different role. It's not just to open and close. It's just to open and close differently. I mean, to close after the story for the illustrator to get involved in a different way, not only showing what the text is saying, but going beyond the text. The illustrator as a special reader who interprets and collaborates with the author in order to create a complete work, a different work. So I've done this for many years, looking for the ideal format, one that will focus on the text, but also to have an image there. I mean, the idea was not for the text to be there for decoration purposes, but that it will invite new illustrators to, I mean, to work in experiments is something that we do not do that much in Latin America, perhaps to go back to black and white images, to look for other images that it's not necessarily an image for children. I mean, it's to experience all these things. That's the possibility that an independent publisher has to do what you think that could make a contribution in order for people to look at books in a different way and not only to contribute to the market. Along these lines, I would like to go into a more difficult scenario. Since we started all this pandemic case, the closing of many things, we see that certain sectors of the editorial chain were at stake. I mean, closing bookstores showed that bookstores in general terms, including the independent ones, are just like part of the battle for independent publishers. So my question is as follows. Within this scenario, first, I would like to give the floor to Claudia, then to Maria, so they will tell us before the pandemic, after the pandemic, which is the relationship between the editorial, between the publisher and the bookstore, and secondly, which were the necessary strategies in order to replace the absence of bookstores or the slow opening of the economy. I mean, what's the bet that you are considering now, taking this into account?
I mean, well, as we all know, it's still an evolving situation. So, you know, if there's much that we're still trying to figure out, and for us here in the U.S., the pandemic is happening differently state by state, and so, you know, as it ebbs and flows and affects communities and states in different ways, you know, the possibilities change. Overall, I mean, in March, of course, the independent bookstores shut down throughout the country. And for us as an independent publisher, we're dependent on independent bookstores. That's a very important relationship for us. I guess it's the most important relationship for us because our books being unusual, they really require independent bookstores to be discovered. People don't necessarily go online knowing they want an Enchanted Lion book. Some people do, but I mean, a large number of people discover our books when they go to the bookstore for, let's say, a more commercial book or, you know, a cookbook or something that they need at home, and then they discover an Enchanted Lion book. So with the shutdown of independent bookstores, that discoverability was cut off for us. And of course, libraries here closed as well. So, and schools closed. So all the places where our books were being used ceased to be open, and acquisition ceased. And so we had to really, I mean, obviously business slowed. I mean, there was a big change in the possibility for selling books that had a great impact on us. And we began to use our website and our social media in different ways. Between August and September, we did our first Kickstarter campaign. So, you know, as a way of bringing more attention to Enchanted Lion, but also as a way of sort of sharing and selling our books within a community that is outside of Amazon, but not independent bookstores. So we've had to adapt in many ways, and we're continuing to adapt, obviously. I mean, the bookstores are open generally now, but they're doing business in a different way. I mean, many stores are still closed. They're selling books over the website, then people come pick them up. And so we are having to create a lot of different strategies of bringing attention to our books. And to do that, we are beginning to build out the blog space on our website. We're doing a lot more social media. We're doing a lot more in terms of email outreach with newsletters and so on to circulate word about our books, while we continue to wrestle with the fact that independent bookstores are just not operating at the level they were, and the discoverability of our books is still limited.
Yo quisiera, antes de cederle la palabra a María,
Before giving the floor to Maria, I would like to ask Claudia for an initiative that I found wonderful, given the response it had in Enchanted Lion. And it is that chain of bookstores closing. The publisher has to do something to make itself visible because the bookstores are no longer present. And a campaign such as Kickstarter, where you had an amazing result. I don't know if it was quick started, but it was a campaign to collect funds in order to leverage the publications for until spring 2021. And please talk about those registration programs like co-ops or packages people subscribe to as a strategy in order to for you to continue being visible, to continue being in that scenario.
From the translation, I'm not clear. I understand the question exactly. The translation was
repetimos.
It's a little confusing. So I think you asked about our subscription program. Is that correct?
Sí, y también por una campaña
And also for the campaign.
Oh, to say something about the Kickstarter campaign.
Okay, so, yeah, that's it.
Okay,
that's what she asked.
I don't know how familiar people might be with Kickstarter, but it's a crowdfunding platform, and they have there've been, since their beginnings, there've been many campaigns done for comics, for books in translation, for independent publishers, and it's raising money, but it's actually also a way of effectively selling your books to and building a community, because people don't just give you money, but basically they're tiers, and you offer books and posters and special things that you're creating to go with the books. We offered panels and conversations and events, so people show up, and if they like what you're doing, they choose to give you money. But in exchange for that, you're basically sharing your books with them. You're sharing how you work. You're sharing the opportunity to see behind the scenes, and creating a more intimate relationship with people who have some, for whom your books have some appeal. So we ran a Kickstarter campaign, which was based on sharing some video. I mean, basically telling our story, letting people know why we were doing the campaign, who we are, what we care about, what we value. And we had a very successful result. I mean, if anybody wants to look at it, I think you can still see the campaign on Kickstarter. And so now we're in a fulfillment stage of that. We're having gotten a lot of community support. We are now in the process of mailing out books and posters and postcards to all of these people who gave us their faith and support. Another thing we started was a subscription program where people, and it's thematic. So we have a subscription program about nature and the natural world, about translation, nonfiction. So if you're particularly interested in a certain theme, you can sign up for our subscription. And then, of course, you pay a chunk of money up front, and then every month we send you books on that subscription. So that was something started after we went into quarantine in March, as another way of trying to reach out to readers and share our books with them.
María.
Bueno, es un mundo completamente distinto porque
it is a totally different world. In Colombia, the amount of independent bookstores is very small if you compare it to the United States. We have few independent bookstores, We do not work with large bookstores, with big chains. So to work in Colombia, you need to be somewhat mad. You have to think one way and to act as the market shows in order not to disappear. So, and I mean, we have to struggle to create those spaces in order to survive. We have reached a point where the budget of the bookstores will be 20% of our annual work, which is very little for some countries, but for us it is a lot. The rest, we have to do it with direct sales. The library enabled for us to have different partners and people interested in books, and we, for example, serve them through the telephone, the chat. We have been very delayed when it comes to the digital world. I had not been concerned about it up to now, but now I'm starting to be concerned because December is right here, and in December a new world is going to start. What's going to happen afterwards? So we are preparing for the future in a very calm manner. We are not going to design a quick page real fast. No, we are going to focus on different things. Right now we are working with small communities in closed spaces, and then we'll see which are the results of these meetings, and we will include it in our YouTube channel. But these are closed opportunities for dialogues, for reading, but it's with few people. I mean, people tell me that we are totally mad because we are doing exactly the opposite. I mean, we're trying to focus and to think before before we assess what's happening. I think it's a huge change. This has not been a business. I mean, it is a company with 10 people who live of that in a very modest manner. I mean, it's not that we want to make more money. We are working here at Babel 3 days a week. We are working at home. We are taking our time to think about it. And by doing so, we have been able to sort of overcome this chaos. I think we have one question left. I would like to put together what you two have said, like what's coming next, what's the future, because we do not see an end to this. As Claudia said, this is just starting. This has not come to an end. We are still inside the hurricane, but within that fragility that we are living today, mainly independent bookstores, independent publishers, there is a very important question not left. It could be somewhat uncomfortable, but it is necessary to discuss it. If this is going to last longer, we see that digital e-commerce, virtual things are going to become increasingly important in order for bookstores and publishers to have visibility within that e-commerce. There are some different market dynamics, different to the ones bookstores have, those with physical presence. I'm referring to the large bookstores, or whether it is Amazon, Mercado Libre, whatever name it has in the country in which you are. And in this new scenario, if there is quite a competition with traditional surfaces. Now, when we are speaking more about e-commerce, it will seem that this is going to be even worse. My question, and it's not even a question, is for you to make a comment from your perspective, from your construction as an independent publisher. how do you see that disadvantage, that battle, that situation now and in the future, and how in independent publishers or independent bookstores, how can we strengthen ourselves in order not to be stuck in this competition and in this e-commerce or digital market in situations that represent certain disadvantages for the small ones?
I mean, from my point of view, I think we quite simply have to. I mean, I understand that the situation in Colombia and the United States is very different, but in the United States, there are many, many, many independent bookstores, and while some regions don't have an independent bookstore, they're enough, and they're enough of them doing online business for us not to give up on them. I mean, it quite simply is the case that we have to continue, we have to make a choice to support independent business and to not support online retailers like Amazon and some of the other big ones. While it may be easy, while they may save us money in terms of shipping costs, we are going to end up with a world we don't want to live in if we don't support our independent business. And that's, it's a moral, I mean, in a way, it's a kind of moral decision that we have to make as to the value of community, the value of physical space, the value of presence, and resisting what is maybe cheaper and easier to do. And I don't think that there's any reason why we have to give more power in this country to Amazon. There's no reason why things need to be purchased over Amazon. It's just as easy to put a mask on and walk out of your house and go get what you need, or get in your car, or call up an independent bookstore if you're looking for a book and order a book from them. So I think it really comes down to our philosophy of life and our behavior and the choices we make. And we have to do everything possible to support independent vision and independent business. Otherwise, we're going to be inframed by technology and inframed by things we don't want to live within. It's sort of as simple as that, according to my point of view.
Claudia, y para ya darle la palabra a María, en ese sentido,
Claudia, in that sense of your comment, from there I take something very valuable. If the market doesn't establish that dynamic that compares the experience, the responsibility is going to be on the buyer, on the consumer. The consumer is going to say, okay, whether I support a virtual purchase or I support my local independent neighborhood business, because when I go out to the world, I want for that independent business to be there. So you say that it's like an individual choice. I mean, the person who has the key to maintain independent business is at last the buyer. They are the ones who make the decision to support or not independent businesses.
I mean, in a significant way, there are also things that should be done on the government level. I mean, in this country, there are clearly things that should be done, which in terms of Amazon, in terms of the amount of tax they pay. And, you know, there are things that should be done on a governmental level, which don't give advantage to a business like that. So I'm not just saying it's only the individual, but obviously individual choice is hugely important. And then legislation is important as well. But, you know, in this country, one of the reasons that it's hard for us to charge for a book what it actually costs in terms of making it is because books have been devalued and people don't think that they should cost that much. And that's because of Amazon. So, you know, it's a complicated picture, but yes, I think it's very important for people to better understand the implications of the choices they're making, and to make the choices which are going to preserve the world as they actually want to live in it.
De acuerdo. Y
Yes, I totally agree. And the scenario in the States is not that different from ours. And Maria can also offer the vision from Colombia. The complexity is the same. To have one bookstore where you have everything, where everything is cheaper, or to deliver it free of charge, it is comfortable. I go into one site and I only click yes. So what we do is to avoid the transaction. If we do not have an intermediary that recommends, that selects, and that offers a supply that goes beyond the commercial problem, it's not only to buy, but is to find out about a world that they are not going to know of. For example, the human being is needed. Hopefully, independent bookstores, when they'll become virtual bookstores, they can offer the same quality that they are offering in their physical spaces. I mean, here things are very different because we do not have an important network. So, I mean, some just take over a space, and such as Amazon, they offer everything. I mean, my books are in Busca Libre. It's a place we have in Colombia. And I mean, with a discount of 60%, and they have not ordered the books from me. I mean, they're importing them from Chile, from the United States. So what they want is to give the idea that everything is there. But they are discriminating. They have nothing back there. Busca Libre, such as Amazon, it's like a trap. There are some commercial spaces to buy things, but not to have an experience with the book, not to create readers, not to be well served. I mean, the problem that they are efficient and that they sell the book for a lower price. That has a minimum importance for the reader and for the construction of a reader. Well, to close, I would like to make a comment, and I would like to give both of you the opportunity to, to say goodbye. 1 hour is not enough. I know that, but in order to convey a message to the reader who is listening to us, and for example, an independent publisher has structural dynamics, and it has a structure different from the large publishing company. It's not that it's better, that it's worse, it's just different because they have different goals. And independent publishers mainly depend on independent bookstores because they are the ones that give to them a different visibility. And this future that we have ahead of us, the bookstore, prevails. I mean, the work of the owner of the bookstore is, it's the one that educates. When people go and buy books. Having said this, I would like to give the opportunity to Claudia and Maria to say goodbye, and I want to thank them for being here. This is just it's just a brief outlook to see what's the commercial market, to see how it's the independent market, no matter where we are, whether we are in New York or in Colombia. So first, we would like to give the floor. So it's your turn, Claudia, to say goodbye.
Oh, okay. The translation cut out. I couldn't hear what was going on. I'm sorry. So thank you, Alexandra. Thank you to the festival. It's been a pleasure to meet with you, Maria, and to know more about your company. I'm so glad to have been involved, and I will look forward to continuing this conversation with all of you and hope to see you there in Colombia one day physically, which would be so amazing. Thank you.
María.
Muchas gracias a ti, Claudia.
Thank you, Claudia. Enchanted Lion is the great reference for all of us who produce books for children. I mean, it is like the independent publisher that I know of in the United States. I want to take this opportunity to thank Alexandra. And it's great that we have covered this topic. It's a very complex topic and obviously requires more time to debate on this. Thank you very much, and we'll see you in another opportunity. Thank you very much for participating.
Bueno,
¿Ya?
cortar así porque...